welcome to the second edition of the Peak Performance Podcast with myself, Richard Pups. Today's special guest is MK, a good friend of mine who's here to discuss many different things, from politics to just life in general. So yeah, MK, would you like to introduce yourself to the people out there?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Richard, for inviting me onto your podcast, Peak Performance. Delighted to be a second guest on the show. So yeah, I'm MK. I am someone who works in financial services, have done for quite a long period of time. As Richard quite rightly mentioned, we are quite close friends, so it's exciting to be on his journey through the podcast. Yeah, dad. I am someone who is a keen footballer, keen traveller as well, been to many places, although obviously lockdown has led to a bit of a slow halt in that element. But I am trying to make sure I go to every continent before I pass away, really.
Okay.
So that's a mission of mine. Also passionate about social mobility, and I think we're going to talk a bit about that in the future on the show. So yeah, just a little bit about myself.
Brilliant. Well, again, thank you for coming down to today to be part of this show. Yeah, me and you have had many conversations in the past. In fact, I was having a conversation before we started to roll, really just on, the general effect that COVID and Brexit and the last 2 years really has had on our lives and to people similar to us. How has it impacted you?
Great question. I think the very first thing is you have to think about reflection straight away. And you have to you're in a position where it's quite weird because the world stopped and halted, and all the things that you would normally be doing, which affect everyone took for granted, all of a sudden disappeared. So there's a natural reflection of, oh my gosh, where am I? What have I done? Where am I going to go, and how is this going to impact me? Selfishly, everyone's going to think about how is this going to impact them. So whether it's their job, housing, and friends and family, how they're going to be coping, etc. So, but actually, for me, lockdown has been lockdown and the whole COVID period has been really fruitful. And before I was kind of almost ashamed to say it, but actually more and more thinking, why not? There are a lot of people who have seen lockdown and the effects of COVID and the closing of the economy, how it's made a huge damage to them, and whether it's their finances, housing, and health, etc. But for me, it's been really, really good. And again, it goes on to the fact how the economy is really split between those that have accelerated,
yes,
whether it's their wealth, education, performance, and those that have unfortunately had a dramatic impact negatively. So managed to buy a property in that period of time.
Brilliant.
So that was, appreciate that. So that was actually at the very beginning of lockdowns. So that was a bit of a challenge at the beginning. But managed to do that. I work in mortgages, so I work in an industry where the housing market has been booming. So again, there was a lot of record numbers of applications go through us. There was a lot of record profit margins, etc. So we've seen our industry has kind of been almost in a bubble. We've just seen acceleration. And a lot of that's to do with the race for space. So what I mean by that is people going on about my point about reflection. People reflect and think, actually, you know what? I don't want to be living in this 2-bedroom apartment that cost me £500,000 in the city. When I have to spend the same amount of money and buy a 3, 4, 5 bed on the outskirts. There was a lot of traction and movement through to that.
So a lot of people are, do you think, moving away from being in the city?
Yeah, a lot of people have been moving away from the city centres, and you see, especially now on the commuter belts, you see quite a lot of increase in the prices. In fact, London's probably had one of the slowest growth of price increases across the country, and a lot of that's because people are moving away on the outskirts and even moving further afield. You also see rents are going up as well on the outskirts as well, which unfortunately for the local communities in those areas sometimes price them out. But I was reading an article the other day where there is about, you know, if a property comes onto the market, usually you have 3 or 4 people within a couple of days, and it's gone straight away, and it's usually gone beyond the asking price as well.
Wow.
So yeah, so so for myself, there's been a lot of good things that have happened. Also, you look at things like health, so cooking, for example. I'm trying to learn to become a better cook. So I'm conscious of making sure I become better at cooking. So there's some particular, I won't name the company name, but there's particular companies out there who are really good, and you can order stuff from them. And there's a plan and action. And so I've been trying to increase my culinary skills as such. So that's been really good as well. And being a better father, really important. So again, development with my daughter, etc. So that's been really important. And also, in terms of my own prospects and goals, I managed to be able to actually sit down, because in a very busy world, people sometimes have excuses, or try and have excuses to not focus on what their goals and objectives are. So yeah, it's just been defining those more and more. So it's been positive, really.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, because the same way that you just said that your situation was positive, I can flip it as well and say that my experience wasn't that bad, if I'm honest with you. During COVID, I took time out for myself and really started to kind of think where I want to go and what I want to actually do in 5 years' time. And I started to look closer at my life plan and really start to make some concrete moves towards getting closer to my goals. I saved up a hell of a lot of money during that time. I'm lucky that my industry during COVID, it was affected, but not too much. And then post-COVID, everyone started to really realize just how important the health is. So I've had a bit of a spike now, and in December it normally kind of dips down, but I know in January it will go back up again when people again kind of come off the back of 2021 and they realize that the health is their most valuable commodity. So yeah, I've been blessed as well to have not been one of those who have really struggled during the whole COVID and Brexit. But I think a lot of that as well is due to our mindset, if I'm honest with you. Like, I've known you for quite a while now, and you've always been like how can we do this, or a solution-based type of person, as opposed to letting things happen to you and then thinking to yourself, oh, how am I going to deal with this?
Yeah, I think that I always say, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen, right? Yes, you can prevent certain things from happening, but generally, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen. But you've got 2 choices. You can either do the "oh, woe is me" attitude, or you can think, right, here's the problem. What is the options and what's my solutions? And deal with it. Really, that's how it should be.
Yeah, and also the fact that you was able to buy a property during the initial stages of lockdown, that gives you confidence that if another situation arises that's not in your favor, well, I turned around buying a property in COVID. So now this next challenge shouldn't be that tough, or your mind is searching for a solution for it because you know what you've just done. It's like a muscle. If you work to muscle, a bicep muscle, and then I said to you, okay, can you help me move this table? You're going to be confident you're going to be able to pick up the table because of the bicep curls we did before.
Yeah, you learn from previous experiences, and you kind of I try and keep as much of a cool head as possible. But you learn from previous experience. Like people in the army, they talk about obviously life-threatening, so it's a completely different set of challenges when they put yourself in the front line. But obviously, people in the army, the more experience they gain, the cooler in terms of what they do, in terms of their approach, their strategy, etc. And you can't get more dangerous and more life-threatening than being in the front line in the army. And if you're an admiral or a colonel, and you're going to make decisions, previous experiences is going to impact and tell you what to do. And that is the same with life generally. And also, I always put gratitude in everything, because it's usually
100%.
First world problems.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, if you look at most of the, over a third of the world haven't even got running water, mate.
I know.
Over a third of the world.
I know.
So I always put perspectives around my problems.
100%. Like I was watching the news yesterday, and I was seeing that there's some refugees that are trying to get over
Belarus.
Yeah.
Into Poland. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of them, they said it's been going to be there for 2 days. Some of them have been there for, like, they said 22 days now, and saying we haven't got water, I've got my child and stuff like that. And it made me think that sometimes I complain because my computer's loading slowly.
Yeah.
You know, and I think to myself, like, wow, like, these guys are with their children trying to get into a country, and
literally life and death, right?
Life and death, yeah. And when you put in the grand scheme of things, my computer running a little bit slower isn't really important, you know. And it also teaches me patience, because a lot of the things that I get anxious about, or a lot of the things that I roll my eyes at, is me telling me I need to get more patience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I know within myself from when we used to work together, that I'm quite an impatient person. If I say I want something done, like, come on, let's get on with it, let's get it done, let's be proactive. But I know that sometimes you just need to, you know, sit back, reflect, and almost like chess, you need to.
But that comes with time, isn't it?
Yeah,
that comes with time. Generally, the younger version of yourself will be less patient than the older version of yourself.
Yeah.
So, and as long as people listening here who are, you know, always work on themselves, you know, talk about the whole point of British premise is peak performance, and that's aim to be as your highest level of performance as possible.
Yeah.
And the way you do that is by learning from your previous self.
Yeah.
Obviously, learning from others is very important as well, and that will then aim to get you to the level where you want to get as high as to the peak as possible. But I also think the peak, you actually never get to the peak.
You don't,
because you always change.
Yeah.
And you should always want to change.
Yeah.
And move forward.
Definitely, and I think it's okay to understand that you'll never get there.
Yeah, I mean, some people will. You have to acknowledge, and you need to. Probably something I don't do all the time is celebrate milestones, because I'm always thinking of the next objective. So I think a bit of reflection sometimes helps in terms of when you achieve something. But overall, you know, like you said, you just got to keep on pushing. Yeah, that's how I see it anyway.
Yeah. So we were quite. I won't use the word lucky, but we were blessed to be able to kind of pivot through the last 18 months, 2 years, to be in a situation where we're kind of okay. Mm-hmm. But what can you see how it may have affected other people differently?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, our economy is hugely service-based, and because it's hugely service-based, it therefore meant that when the lockdown happened, what it meant is there was not much service left.
Yeah.
Especially, obviously, you look at something like hospitality, completely decimated that. So certainly, if you are in those service-led businesses that were pretty much, you know, lower paid, sometimes some of them seasonal, as well as those in the farming industry, you know, where they'll pick up people from a seasonal basis, there will be a lot of impact in that. Plus the businesses themselves. So we're talking about the staff.
Yeah.
But we also talk about the business owners.
Yeah.
There was a lot of those who had bricks and mortar, and didn't have any other channels in terms of how they would operate their business.
Yeah.
So they will have what they would have, or they had a huge amount of financial, emotional impact, and some of them you'll never see again. On the high street again. Difficult because I'm a free market person. Sorry for those who I believe in the free market. I do believe the market, but I think this scenario, this was not based on pure economics. This was purely based on the pandemic. It wasn't economic. It wasn't the market determining a recession. It was a false recession. Based on the fact that the economy just completely shut down. but you're going to get those scenarios. Frontline workers also had an impact, especially you saw those in the NHS.
Yeah.
And they had a tough time, tough time dealing with the virus. So I commend and all those who worked throughout tirelessly to support the nation. So I think they definitely deserve our accolades 100%.
Yeah.
It was a tough gig for those. But yeah, so there would have been a huge amount of suffering as well. And obviously, the others will be people who maybe have underlying issues that made a massive impact. And also, without going into details of the virus itself, but obviously the older generation had a huge impact. Obviously did have a huge impact statistically on the death ratio, which was predominantly for those in the 70 plus onwards. There were kind of a lot of the demographics and the groups that had a huge impact on them through the COVID period. And and I think the furlough scheme made a huge difference. That was groundbreaking.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I didn't think the government was going to come with such a powerful tool to assist people. They had to do something, but I take my hat off to them for that, because it was a difference between a lot of people surviving and going under.
And ironically, if you think about it, I was reading an article about this as well, because I know we might pick up about the recovery. I know we might have been asked questions about the future later on. But if you think about it, there were some people on furlough who actually were better off.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, 80% of your wages was getting paid for by the government, right? But you didn't go shopping. You didn't go to the bars and clubs that you usually spend your money on. You don't pay for travel because you don't get it. Yeah. So if you think about it, there was a lot of people out there who were on furlough, get 80% of their income, who you talked earlier about, you had a lot of savings. If you, the banks and building societies had record amounts of money in there because people weren't spending the money.
Yeah.
So you think about, there was actually quite some people who were better off being on furlough than they were in the open economy, because they didn't have to spend that money.
Yeah.
Which led to a lot of savings across the whole society, really.
Yeah. And I think that for me personally, it changed my thought process, because it's like I spend differently now on the back of that. There's a couple of things that I wanted to take from COVID and the whole last 2 years that we went through. One of them was just to go outdoors more and just celebrate almost the world we're living in. Like, take 30 minutes, go and sit in the park, walk through the park, embrace nature more. And another thing that I realized is that I've got over 20 pairs of trainers. Why am I going to buy another pair? So it changed my spending habits the last 18 months. And also it changed my perspective on what is fun, because I'm happy now. I'm happier just going out with nature and just walking. Whereas before, as you know, it's always like you said previously, what's next? Okay, I need to go and see this client, let's do this. Okay, diary, okay, I've got to go, and it was just like go. Whereas now I always make sure that on a weekly, sometimes even daily basis, I take some time out for myself just to kind of reflect and give thanks. I'm always giving thanks, because the last 18 months showed me just how things can change, and we're lucky to be alive, you know?
So a lot of people are more conscious of time now.
Yes.
They're a lot more, they evaluate their circumstances in life. So there's a thing now called the Great Resignation. You've heard about that?
No.
So that's where there's loads of people resigning from their jobs now, because they're actually thinking, you know what? I don't want to work for that boss that's treating me this way, or I don't want to work for this company because I'm not passionate about what I do. So there's a huge amount of people resigning and moving. I think it's a great thing overall.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, for the employers, it's not, but ultimately, this will help shape and change culture in different organisations.
Yes.
We're currently, I think it was statistics that came out recently. We got record number of vacancies at the moment. Over 1 million vacancies at the moment, which is incredible. and I think we're up on pre-pandemic in terms of number of vacancies. So that's a good thing for the economy, that there is opportunity out there.
Yeah.
What that would lead to is potentially, higher wages demand.
Yeah.
Which also will affect inflation, which I think you wanted to pick up on a bit. But inflation, the higher wages could lead to more high inflation happening. But equally, this is where we are in a position where the employees are the ones in control now.
Yes, employers. Yes.
And that's the kind of scenario we're in at the moment.
Massive shift.
Yeah. So it's not just here; it's happening in America as well. The Great Resignation, as they call it at the moment. The same things happen over there in the States, and their labour laws are not as good as ours at all. So you can imagine there's a lot of disruption and movement. And employers will need to be able to have things like, people are going to look and think, right, hybrid working. You don't offer that, but these companies offer hybrid working.
Yes.
I want to be able to have the opportunity to pick up my daughter, or my son, or my or support my elderly relative, or whatever, for an hour or two.
Yeah.
And then continue to work. Flexible working. These are the things that are really important to people. Flexible working arrangements. I still see people talk about, everyone will return back to the office, or I want people to do this. I believe 9 to 5 is a dead game. I, for example, have flexible working. I just choose to start early in the morning and finish, at different time. Time to some of my peers, my colleagues, and it works great for me. And having that opportunity to be able to have those flexible hours, as long as it doesn't impact business and operational, situations, then employees need to look at things like that. Culture, diversity. Are we, people will choose when they're looking at jobs, right? Is this an inclusive organisation? Is this an organisation? Let me look at the leadership. Do they have any representation of me? Do they have representation of the nation? That's a challenge now. Are we having executive teams? Are we having senior leaders that are a representation of the whole of society? So if I'm an employee now and I've got all these opportunities, especially if I'm skilled, highly skilled, then these are going to be at the forefront of decision making. As well as obviously the salary and benefits that come with the role.
Because even one of my clients, she worked for a certain bank in Canary Wharf, and she switched from the bank that you can see from her window because
it's all good because there's lots of banks in
in
that area, so with a few symbols on there. So,
But based on benefits, not necessarily salary, but benefits. Some of them like would pay for her PT sessions. Which is you didn't get that when we were working. So I totally get what you're saying. What I was going to ask you regarding the employment side of things as well is, do you think that in terms of like hospitality and those sorts of areas, do you think that is the government going to struggle because there's not people in those positions? Is the economy going to?
So the and these are just my own views. So I'm not an economist as such, although I'm passionate about politics and economy, and also speaking to people. I think there's shortages in different areas, and it all depends on the immigration policy. So the immigration policy is difficult at the moment for lower skilled workers to come into the country. I have views on that, and I do believe that we should be getting more people in this country to be taking up more jobs, to fill those vacancies in, and build up their skills and support the economy as such. But there's also issues around welfare and issues around getting the balance right.
Because some people are actually better off on welfare or on universal credit rather than actually going to do these jobs, the hospitality jobs.
But there are shortages, loads of shortages in the hospitality industry. One, it goes back to my previous point though, about treating people fairly, correctly. Appreciate, you can only pay a certain amount, otherwise it's not feasible. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I think for me, the government should be encouraging, and not just government, the businesses should be encouraging to find a career path for those maybe who want to be in hospitality. Obviously, there'll be various different people coming into that group. Because I mean, students will be there to help support, fill the gap. But not every place and every town's got students in it, etc. But yeah, encouraging people, more people in this country to go and work in these places. I know the national living wage is going up.
Yes, yeah.
And people can argue whether it's enough or not. But ultimately, you have to think of it both sides. You have to think about if you're a business owner, you can't afford to pay £15 an hour. There's no point in running the business. But that helps at least with the national living wage going up. And I think it's a difficult one to say about, do we turn on the immigration, what's the word I'm looking for, button? Do we turn on the immigration button for certain sectors when actually you've got people in the country who can potentially fill those vacancies?
And for me, the struggle is like, do the people in this country want to fill those vacancies? Do they want to jump into these jobs? And I suppose time will tell, because if they're not applying for them, then it shows that they don't want these jobs.
I mean, and that be, the government will have to make decisions on how they deal with it, but ultimately there is enough people in this country to fill a lot of the jobs in the hospitality sector. And it goes down to conditions, it goes down to treating people fairly and correctly. You can't be an employer and treat people badly, and just because they may be a waiter or jobs that, by the way, I'm not saying they are, not saying that anything against those jobs. My point, in fact, I'm trying to say, the point is, because they're doing these jobs, they should be treated just as well as any other sort of job. So environment's really important. But yeah, I mean, there's so many of these vacancies that's, it's going to be a challenge for these businesses. Christmas is coming. Let's see what happens, because there's going to be a lot of people out and about, and people need to be in a position to be able to serve, and there might be some business that might not continue at the moment.
No, you're spot on.
Attract the right people.
And to can I touch upon what you just said? You mentioned that people are going to be out and about. So, and it's going to be cold.
Well, we hope, as long as lockdown.
And it's going to be cold, so that is probably going to create more sick people. In terms of employment that you touched upon, people are, the Great Resignation and people leaving and trying to find other jobs. That ties me back into the NHS. So with the NHS, I know that there's so much, they got a 1% pay rise. So a lot of people are leaving because they're thinking, wait, I could be, an Amazon driver with less stress and getting paid more. But also now they're saying that they have to get vaccinated if you're front line. So I know a few people that I know who are working who don't want to get the vaccine, but also considering going to another industry. So on the back of that, can you see how the NHS is also going to struggle to...
Yeah, I mean, every winter, generally, the NHS struggles anyway. There's not enough capacity in the NHS during winter. Every successive governments have tried to ease that. But yes, there is going to be more pressure because of COVID and the waiting lists already. That is horrendous at record levels as well. In terms of vacancies, I don't think, it's talking about 60,000 unvaxxed NHS workers, I think, roughly. I don't think they'll be leaving anytime soon, personally. Because first of all, implementations by April next year. So I think the government's not being very clever with that, because that gives the whole winter to go through with. I think there's too much disruption as well for people to think about doing alternative careers at this moment in time. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of people who are passionate about helping people. Yes. They're in the NHS. Because let's be real, most people can't pay in the NHS for money because they're not getting paid anywhere near as much
as they should do.
But certainly, so I don't think there'll be any mass vacancies, no matter what opposition say, or no matter what comes out, I don't think there's going to be a mass, certainly in the winter period. I think people have a duty of care, and I think people want to make sure that they can support patients coming in terms of that. But yeah, there's going to be challenges as always, but I think the NHS always try and find a way. I'm not, you know, on the podcast, not to talk about vaccination in terms of pros or not, but obviously the government are saying about those who want to get a booster to impacts on there. That's one where, whether people believe it or not, that's one where people potentially can reduce the risk of people going into hospital, which will help that. I don't know if you've seen in Austria, they've gone a lockdown.
For non-vaccinated people, which is controversial.
Yeah,
very controversial.
And don't forget they're a European Union nation. So this is not somewhere in like Eastern Europe where they're like militant and it's you know, this is Eastern Europe. So this is effectively a
neighbour.
EU. So that's quite controversial in itself, and I think the government have got measures to support the NHS throughout winter, so it could be mini lockdowns, depending where there's hotspots, as well to support that. As I said, I talked to you about the booster program they've got going on at the moment. That will help. Or perceive to help, whichever way people believe it, but perceive to help the NHS as well. I'm sure things like minor surgeries and stuff like that will just get delayed again, which is, I'm sorry folks, but that's how they will have to prioritise on things like that. There's not enough beds to support, you know, to have people. Someone I know, they went to A&E literally a week and a half ago, and they were like, they just couldn't believe it. There was no beds for them. They were really in, you know, pains, etc. And they said that they were lucky. They got there really early, and they had to sit down. And it was an illness that were like chest pains and stuff like that. So they're quite older, and had to sit down for ages, and like no one's really coming to see them, etc. And they had to remind. But I said when they've got treated, etc., and they were going back, they were saying that there was just a queue of people, and they're like, they were just so lucky they got there early. I was like, wow, because there's no beds, there's no, so it's and this is a London hospital as well. So you can imagine across the country, similar stories that are impacting different people.
We spoke about this earlier before we came on live, but we're trying to think like, what's the solution to help the NHS? Like, you know, might sound a bit controversial, but how can we stop the NHS from crumbling? How can we? What options do we have, Kojo?
I would say that there's a couple of things. The first thing you've got to think about is that, because I know what you're trying to say. You're trying to get me to say about paying for it. Could put me down as some Tory. Right wing person. But no. So I mean, obviously that is an option.
That's an option.
So I'm not saying that we should do that, but that is an option. So you can pay NHS, but you could do partial payments. You can do it based on income levels as well. Do you know what I mean? Now people will talk about, yes, well, we do that already, the taxation version in through the national insurance. Obviously, the more you earn, the more you tax. Blah, blah. But you can have some sort of insurance-based system where you know, people can opt to get that. I'm not saying that should happen. We're just discussing options. That could happen. I ain't thought of a radical one, but this is really bad. Just start from scratch. And I know it sounds weird, but just start from scratch, right? And it's difficult to do that, but it's literally you start from scratch. New wait list, just blank out the wait list. But I know it sounds controversial. Wow. And I'm only saying this is an option. Probably an option that probably most people wouldn't want, because but what you could do is either start from scratch, but in that
caveat is all the cancer patients, all the life-threatening ills, just get them, sort them out.
Yeah.
All the minor industries, delete. But all the life-threatening ones, you get them
Get
in
to the front of the queue.
Yeah, just get them in, sort them out as much as you can, treat them. All the minor industries, you have to redo it again. You start from scratch from that element. I know people then might say, well, it's going to escalate quickly again.
Yeah.
But that program, or starting from scratch, should also include restructuring the NHS and making it more efficient. Yeah. So whether that's top level management needs to be reduced. How many managers do you need? You know, how much of that? You know, whether we need more frontline staff, pay them more money.
Yes.
More specialists. Maybe you have use of the private sector. You know, there's a lot of good quality private, and you may have to pay the private sectors more. I know there is a lot of private work going on, and NHS is paying for it as well. But just expand, just kind of have a root and branch, complete revamp. Where are the efficiencies? Where are the savings? Where are the you know? It's just a shambles. So that's what I mean by start from scratch.
Yeah.
Not by the way, I'm saying get all the life-threatening stuff. That as a caveat to what I'm saying, they all need to get seen to and pushed all the way to the front of the queue, because there's scenarios I saw, which is heartbreaking when you see someone die from cancer because they've been on a waiting list for so long.
Yeah.
And it's like, and because of COVID, they kept putting back. So therefore, what system is it that, you know, determines? Do you know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying is sort out all the life-threatening industries and start from scratch for everything else.
Yeah. No.
So that's another option potentially. The other option is to so we already talked about the other option is full privatization.
Yeah.
Which is and you just have an American type based system.
We have to pay for
everything.
Yeah. So if you go in, just as hurting, can I see your credit card, please?
Yeah.
Let me just tap it in. I'm dying. Let me just quickly tap it off. We'll do this in the bank.
I need the free in the bank. By the way, obviously we're joking. We don't want people to. So I'm subconscious, but I don't know the audience. I don't know if they know the humor. They know our humor. But that's another way. You just purely have everything privatized. Yeah. So the first option when I said about paying for it that's part private. That part NHS. You know, we're saying you're paying more for subsidy. Yeah. But the third option is you just go full privatized.
Yeah.
It's a tough one because the American system is brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal, especially for the lower working class and the working class. It's brutal. How would that impact our lowest earners in society? That's going to be a huge impact.
That'll be a huge impact. That's why I was saying that perhaps we should, again, and I know this is kind of controversial, but I don't think that there's an easy option for this, for the cure of the NHS, so to speak. So if everyone was to pay like a £10 a month, just pluck a number out the air.
In addition to the national insurance,
yes, and that would be like NHS, I don't know, insurance, say to call it. So everyone had to pay an additional £10. So you pay your tax, you pay national insurance, and you pay your NHS insurance, and that's just £10 per person per month.
So the thing is, obviously, the national insurance is what contributes to support the NHS, right?
Yeah.
And there's a 1%. Is it 1%? Yeah, 1% increase next April. That got, people saying, it's impacting it's going to impact the poorest in society. So I think from a government point of view, to add a forcible £10 politically won't work. So I think you'd have to do it privately, where basically say to people, look, you need to have your own private. You have to do it in a way where it's not. How can I put it? It's not forcible, but there needs to be measures. I mean, you're gonna have to speak.
Does that happen life insurance? You're saying?
Yeah.
So
it's optional, but you try and influence people rather than say, is you have to, every single person has to put money on it.
Yeah.
Because I think from a government point of view, they wouldn't do it because that's the uproar. The uproar, because there was already uproar for putting that extra 1% for social care and trying to sort out the NHS mess as it stands. And they've already taken away, £20 a week for UC. Payments, and people are kicking off of that. So then add £10. But for me and you, I think £10 a month extra is nothing, but some other people might think it is. But it's difficult because these are solutions we're talking about. And it's another option, but it's a difficult one, isn't it?
Yeah, but like, say, to flip on its head and say that, like, if we do nothing, the NHS will crumble.
Yeah, and I agree.
So something has to be done, and I don't think that there's a solution that everyone's saying, oh, that's fine, yeah, I like that one. I think that it's going to have a sting in its tail now, but in the future we'll be, singing its praises because we was able to adapt to the pain, and we still have an NHS.
No government will attempt to take it privatized because they'll never be in power. And people get shot advertising privatization because there's parts of the NHS that are actually part privatized anyway. But you're right, there needs to be a system to help support. So whether that's increasing in taxes, whether it's, like I said, just trying to clear all the life-threatening, serious illnesses and scrap everything else. But there are also other things that need to be helping. I think we need to have social responsibility ourselves. And do we? I mean, really, you go out on a piss on a Friday night all across the country, and you get wasted with alcohol and stuff, and you go and there's some A&E's burden. Do we really?
Yeah.
Is it? Maybe it sounds controversial. Maybe people be cheering. I said, but sorry, you're here self-inflicted because you had a night out on a piss, got totally wrecked, and now you're an A&E.
Yeah.
Sorry, you need to leave. You know what I mean? You need to leave.
Yeah.
So that's an example of a social responsibility.
Yes.
That has a huge burden on, fights breaking out and being people punching each other out.
Yeah.
And that happens across the country.
Yeah.
On Friday and Saturday nights. So
they have to then pay.
And that's
another option.
Yeah. So there's talk about things like obesity. And I understand there's people who will be depressed and eating as a comfort. So, but ultimately there'll be some people who are just indulging, keeping indulging. Should the NHS pay for that? These are the things that I don't know. This is what I'm saying about social responsibility. Are we trying to, if we want to help and support the NHS, what are we doing to try and make sure
exactly, as opposed to almost thinking that it's the government's duty to put things in place to help the NHS, where there's stuff that we could do within ourselves to help the NHS.
Yeah.
Eating right, exercising, be more mindful. There's stuff that we can do.
And see stuff that you do. You're helping the NHS by having all your clients. Having all your clients and supporting health, and you promote a lot of healthy eating and education, and that's where people like yourselves and others can help support society by education and health, and that's the key for me. So that's probably the fifth or fourth, whichever one we're on now, to support the NHS. Education is really important.
Yes, definitely. Okay, I'm going to flip on its head a little bit and randomly talk about interest rates. How will interest rates going up or going down impact the average schmo or someone watching the podcast?
Yeah, so I think first of all, it's most important to explain what interest rates are or how they work, what they do. And I think the first thing is interest rates are set by the Bank of England. And the reason they are in control of it, first, they used to be actually set by the government, and government used to have full autonomy of the Bank of England. The Bank of England now is fully autonomized by itself. So, although the government can influence, but the reason why the bank sets it is because they look after
economic in terms of things like inflation. So the government sets the Bank of England target, which is 2%, can't be more than 2% from an inflation point of view, as in above 2%. Each year. So interest rates are used to kind of control inflation. So obviously, the higher the interest rate, the more expensive it is to borrow money. And obviously, if you borrow money to go and buy cars, goods, services, as well as obviously business finance and all that sort of stuff, which then increases prices, etc. So the more expensive it is, the less you're going to want to borrow. So that's one way to curb interest rates, and equally so, if you want to help a recovery and boost, you want to reduce interest rates. Hence is what happened with we're at record interest rate levels at the moment because of the pandemic. That helps give confidence. People want to buy stuff because that mortgages are cheap or whatever. I mean, if you remember me, we've owned properties for years. And you remember back in the days, I mean, 5-6%, people were like, yes, that's great. That's a good rate. These young cats today, they've never seen those rates in their life. So what's happening at the moment is that because of the pandemic, there's been worldwide pressures which are affecting us in our country, and a lot of that's to do with manufacturing, and the supply chain is having a huge strain. Yes, Brexit has an impact as well. It doesn't help that our nearest, and I was going to say dearest, but probably not dearest now. Not anymore. But our nearest neighbours, which we have a huge trade we have a huge trade relationship. They're actually now having a trade deficit at the moment as well. That has also had issues as well. But effectively, if you're getting less supply, but the demand is there, so because we talk about the economy and we talk how now people get back to work, and as I said, people like me, yourself, and a lot of people have money because they can save money. So what they do with that money when the economy's reopened, they want to spend it all. So with demand kind of outstripping supply, prices are going up. We can get you these raw materials, we can do this, and this, but because it's limited and so everyone wants it, this is how much you're going to pay for it. 100%. So what's happening is that then manufacturers and business owners are saying, well, we can absorb some of it, or we can't really absorb much of it, so that goes to the consumer, which means inflation. And it's prominent. It's quite poetic we're talking about today, because today was just announced the inflation figure, and it's 4.2%.
Wow.
So remember I said to you how the target's 2%. Double the expected target. What usually happens when it's up above so much, the Bank of the Chancellor writes to the Bank of England governor, does, well, it's not 2%. Tell me what you can do about it. So the likelihood is there's going to be a rate rise. Actually, they thought in the meeting they just had last month, or a couple of weeks ago, sorry, it was huge. The market expected a rise then. And they held off. And the reason they held off is because it's sensible, because it's not something they can control. They cannot control the supply chain worldwide. They can't control the gas that's coming from Russia and all these places, which is also having a huge inflationary impact. So they have control of trying to curb inflation, but when it's coming from outside sources, it's very difficult to try and do that. So any rate rise is almost going to be negligible on what's happening with inflation. They predict inflation will reach 5% next year. And there will be rate rises, and the likelihood is before February there'll be a rate rise. So that's a prediction for you. Before February there'll be at least one, maybe two rate rises. They might even say by the end of 2022 might be at 0.75% rate rise, maybe 1% by the end of 2022. But what that means is, as I said, it means it's going to be more expensive for you to borrow. It means your mortgage payments. Now, this is the thing: the media always talk, like, oh, you're going to pay more for your mortgage. Well, actually, there's a majority of people are on what's known as a fixed-term mortgage.
So majority of people won't actually feel that impact of
until their fixed rate expires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So most people won't feel that impact. If you're one of the, I don't want to use the words unlucky or lucky, unlucky. I wouldn't. But if your fixed rate expires next year, then obviously you're going to see an impact on that. Bear in mind, though, we're still at quite low levels of interest rates.
We've been here before.
Yeah. So because even when you look to remortgage next year, we're still having quite relatively low interest rates.
Yeah.
To oppose historic numbers.
Yeah.
So it's not like this doomsday scenario. But yeah, so but people will find that their mortgage payments will be slightly higher, which therefore means if you add that and you add the fact that you already got inflationary pressures with your gas and electricity, I know I've seen mine go up a bit.
Same here.
Yeah, and you add that on what you're doing for the price, what prices of goods and services out there, that's going to be a squeeze on a lot of people. You add in the 1% rise in NHS on taxes, then I think people should be starting to talk to their employers about rises in their pay, etc.
Because sorry to interrupt you, but like you touched upon, so people's mortgages are going to be going up, their gas, their electricity, possibly water rates.
Don't forget, forgot council tax as well.
Council tax is a big one.
I think it's 3.4%, but I don't know, and it also depends on which borough you're in, which
and what band in your house.
Yeah, and all that stuff. Yeah,
and then you got petrol.
Yeah,
so
it's quite a huge squeeze.
And what up in the next?
Well, everything started. Well, some of it's starting now.
Yeah,
I mean, gas prices are already high at the moment.
Even food
and supply. Yeah, exactly. Food is going up, and the other thing is that the Bank of England and also the government want a full recovery, and these are things that could impact on that recovery, because if people are not spending money, then that's going to impact the economy.
Yeah, so it's almost like if the interest rates are too high and people are not spending because they're being squeezed, the economy is going to suffer.
Correct. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
But equally, you don't want inflation to get out of control.
Yeah.
So you need to have that balance around. So rather Andrew Bailey than me, the governor of England, and Rishi to sort that out, because it's not easy. It's not easy to balance between trying to help the recovery coming from a pandemic and trying to curb inflation at the same time. So there's going to be a lot of challenges ahead, really.
And the mad thing about it as well is that the pandemic has had a massive effect on the economy. But when you add Brexit on top of that as well, it's like some of our deals that we're, like you said, with our neighbours are going to be different. Like the fish, for example.
Yeah, I mean, that's only 0.2% of our economy. That's more of a sovereignty war. It's not a massive impact on our economy. Okay. However, it's a political impact, which is why there is issues around that. It's more political and then economic. But that then can lead to bigger issues, because if there's the more important things like the Northern Ireland Protocol. So that's where there's which is really complex. Now we're going into the real deep stuff about Brexit and technical things, but we share a land border with the EU. Yeah. And the single market, which is effectively where goods and services can flow between all the EU states without further checks. Once it's landed in one country, there don't need to be any further checks around the whole of Europe. Yeah. And the freedom of movement is another factor as well, where freedom of people and money can flow around as well, without needing of visas or anything like that. But we share a land border with Europe. So on one hand, they want to keep the integrity of the single market, because if you think about it, if you're coming from Northern Ireland and you're they've got their own rules and regulations. Obviously, we've just left. Yeah. So we haven't changed our rules yet, but the concern is divergence and making change rules, And I know people laugh about things like, the banana is slightly this way, but it's more than just that. There's integrity in trade relations, and you want good food standards and and to be fair, the UK have said they want to adhere to that. Obviously, the EU side were thinking, well, we don't trust you anyway. But,
yes.
So there's a lot of issues around that, the trade between going through. So at the moment, they've botched a deal with Northern Ireland Protocol, where goods coming in, bear in mind, from mainland UK to Northern Ireland has checks. Can you imagine that? A sovereign nation, right? We've got our own, we're all part of the UK, but any goods coming from the UK mainland to Northern Ireland has checks, minimal checks, but checks.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, what they're saying is after that, you can then, it's free flowing between Northern Ireland and Ireland. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what they don't want is things going through the back door into Europe.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why they make a compromise. But the issue with that is it's causing a lot of issues between UK and Northern Ireland, because Northern Ireland and UK have Northern Ireland trades, most of its trade comes into with the UK.
Yes.
You see, so there's a bit of friction. So they call it an invisible border down the Irish Sea. But the reason they've done that is obviously because of the Good Friday Agreement, which they want to preserve, because obviously Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland had issues in the past, etc., and they don't want to put a hard border. So it's complicated, but that is going to have a massive impact on what's happening, because there's a thing called Article 16, which effectively says UK can say, we're going to slightly pause on that, and we're going to just bring loads of stuff in between Northern Ireland and Ireland, because it's not helping the businesses at the moment. The EU obviously would be not happy with that, because obviously they're saying it's going to be an integrity on their single market. So there's watch this space, people, basically, because if they trigger this Article 16, the UK government, that might have a bigger impact on the wider trade between the UK and the EU. So, and then that means for everyday people, that means it could be more expensive to buy goods and services from the EU to the UK, and implication is because tariffs. They'll just put tariffs, which is basically taxes on those things, which means
it'll get passed on to us, and we'll have to.
So we hope Article 16, hopefully there could be a resolution, and Article 16 doesn't get triggered. And because it's also important for the Northern Ireland businesses to be able to trade with they're part of the UK. They should be able to have trade, but I can understand also the EU side as well. You share a border with us, and if you're going to bring goods in, we want the goods to meet our measures and our expectations. Because once it's in Ireland, then you're in Europe. As in the EU, European Union. So so it's going to be fascinating next year. See what happens with what's happened, but EU trade. But also, we just need to be look at what trade deals will happen around the world. What our trade relationships going to be,
like with America, or
Australia, China's going to be interesting, and obviously climate change. We haven't picked up on that, but someone's asked Boris the other day around, the China has not signed up to eradicating coal. So what are you going to do about trade relations? And like, well, it's slightly different. But when it comes to money, you can't tell them, you have to reduce coal, or you're not going to deal with it, because China's
that's suicide.
Exactly. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens, and it'd be interesting to see in 5 years' time how our shops and our food is shaped. What type of things are we going to have on the shelves and stuff? Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Because we don't make loads of things, unfortunately, anymore. We don't make those things. So we import a lot.
It's funny because the stuff that I'm seeing when I go to my local supermarket that have been out of stock for months. Like sparkling flavored water. Like, why is that out of stock? There's certain like fish that's gone up by like 50p. I'm like, whoa, like it was already expensive to start with, and now it's like it's gone up again. So it's like you said before, it's already impacting us. But what advice would you give to the listeners to kind of prevent them being in hardship when the next
So a couple of things. Sorry, a couple of things. First, on the last point, Angela Merkel's coming up. Reign's coming up now, so she's going to be gone. That's going to be a massive. It could be a massive. She's a massive influence in the EU, and her leaving, she also had a very cool head, and that be interesting to see who replaces her as chancellor, and how Germany are going to be forward. And Macron's got his election next year. And so he's going to be thinking a lot domestically, and he probably wants to has his fist up because it's talking about, you've got the migrants. So don't forget, it's not just the fishing, you've also got the migrant scenario between, Calais and Dover, and all of, Kent and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's having a lot of issues because we have record numbers of migrants coming into the UK.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know if you know, it works with asylum. It should be the first safe country that you go to, you seek asylum from. Now, France is a safe country. Do you know what I mean? So, and you've had to cross so many places to get to France. So there's a lot of there's a lot on the landscape, which, why am I mentioning to the viewers? Because it's going to have an impact overall on your second question, because the leadership of the EU is changing. Where we had influence before, we don't have much influence anymore. And we're going to have
less. And
we have to have, alliances in Europe. We're part of NATO anyway, so we've got a lot of, part of the G7, G20, and so we're part of those groups. So we just need to continue to try and have influence in Europe as well. But those changes are going to make it interesting. We'll be interested to see, especially who comes in. So if France, Macron doesn't win, you've got the hard right as well, and they'd be very militant in terms of what they do.
Yeah, in terms of immigrants, they will.
Well, but also want to pander to the I'm France, on the go on my chest, and we need the Labours to cooperate with us.
Yeah.
So it's let's see what happens. But at the same time, Macron is very arrogant himself, and he thinks he knows it all, and he thinks he can,
think he'll win?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not 100% close to the French politics. All I know is there's been a lot of unrest and disruption in France. And it'd be interesting to see how they vote and what they do. But I think the Angela Merkel one's the big one. She was phenomenal, and she, even when everyone's very emotional, she's very cool and calm. And she was a big figure in the EU, and be interested to see how the EU perform and act under new leadership. We'll see what happens there. But going back to your question around, so I think the first thing people need to do is remember there's 1.something million vacancies out there, right? Are you happy in your job? Have you looked at, I looked at statistically, you actually you earn more money by moving to another company
than you do getting promoted within your own one.
Yeah, generally. Well, even promoted or even if usually you should get annual pay rises anyway. But it's usually linked to inflation. I would suspect most people, when they look at their pay rises in April or wherever, like January, April, whatever, it will be below inflation. So what that means in real terms is a pay cut. So people have to remember that. Think about that. So it's a pay cut in real terms. So one is to look for a job. Look for a job that can pay more. I know it sounds easy. Sorry, it sounds easy, but actually, why not? If you've got the skill set, etc. Bargain, negotiate. Look, this is what I'm earning. Or sorry, this is what I'm going to be earning. Offer. Can you match it? Some companies will do, some won't. I think you need to ensure that I look at savings as a thing where try and have some buffer if you can. And what I mean by that, everyone's different down the economic scales. Even if it's £10 a month. Just put something down. Just put something down and just keep trying build a buffer for yourself. I also think for those who are in a position where they are can afford to do it, invest your money. Invest your money into stocks, into equities, into other things. Speak to a financial advisor about that. But if you can beat inflation, that's going to help. help in terms of getting your money moving more faster and quicker. So that certainly is going to be something that I think people need to think. Shop around for your energy supply.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
shop around for your energy supply, and maybe look for a fixed rate where you know what you won't move. There's usually energy caps.
Yeah.
So shop around. Look, are you on the best rate? Are you on the best deal? Even menial things like speak to your mobile phone companies. It's such a competitive industry at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave. What can you offer me?
Yes.
A lot of people have, like, I've got family on my package, etc. So if you've got 3 or 4 people, you've got a whole family on there, you can have even more weight.
Yes. Yes.
We take all 5 contracts to X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Look around at what things you can do. Things like you said about, you know, you can go all the way to granular things like, you know, walk instead of taking the bus.
Yeah.
Cycle. Obviously, in winter's not as great, but you know, cycle.
Yeah.
I know a few of my family members do that. You know, and it saves them a bomb of money.
Yeah.
Get a partner. I know it's like money partner. Well, no, get a partner, because economically, a household of 2 is in a household of 1.
Yeah.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You are going to have that, you know, scenario where it's less burden, less pressure.
Yeah.
You know, believer people who are in partnerships will help impact on those things. So they're kind of some of the things that will help support people to try and curb, you know, and keep up to date with what's going on.
Yes, I think that's one of the key things that I'll touch upon, is because if you, in my experience, are not in tune with what's going on, it may come to a point where you may struggle. So update your knowledge on what's going on. Speak to your bank and just get updated so you're aware of what's going on, because in that way you can kind of plan, plot and strategize to what you need to do next. And sometimes I feel as though we don't talk about money, we don't talk about investments, we don't talk about these things. And I think that with anything in life, once you start to talk about it and put under the magnifying glass and look at it real close, it loses its power and it becomes easier less daunting and easier to understand. So find the knowledge, get it, and like, you know, I'm hoping this podcast today will kind of help you to think, you know what, I need to have a plan if you don't already have a plan, because it's something for me that it helps me to sleep better at night, knowing that if the interest rates did rise a little bit, I have little maneuvers that I can do to ensure that it has minimal impact on me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at reviewing your finances all the time.
Yes.
Review your finances all the time.
Yes.
That's from your mortgage down to what you're paying on your credit card. You know, all these things help. There's so many 0% deals out there that last for 24 months and 36 months.
Yeah.
So there's reviewing your finances all the time, but also like reviewing what you're doing in your life. You know, reviewing your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Cutting down on things, takeaways. I mean, you know, everyone's different in their economic cycle. Some people, they've got the money, so those are the people that need to think about investing to beat inflation. Having your money sit in the bank is a big no-no. So having your money sit in your bank is a no-no, because first of all, you're earning 0.0 whatever interest rate, and you're losing money because inflation's
going up. Yeah.
I think that you should there's a distinction between a large lump sum of money, which is either being used for a purpose, which is like a deposit for a house, and also for a rainy day, which is, I was going back to my point about, you know, even if you've got £10 a month, whatever, to having this money sat there for no purpose, for no reason. That needs to be invested, and that needs to be utilised.
Yes, it needs to work for you.
And there's things like compounding that interest and other aspects, but with interest so low, it's some of it's meaningful.
Meaningless.
So I like trying to beat their inflation game, because it's a killer. Inflation's a killer.
Yeah.
try and beat that. So yeah, there's lots and lots of things to do. People should just go and check, maybe book an appointment like you said with their bank. Speak to brokers because they will have a wider view. You can go to a bank. All they're going to do is talk about their products.
Yes.
You know, like you speak to a broker, they'll have a holistic view of the market and look at risks and see what your risk appetite's like and cater for your services around that.
Brilliant.
So there's lots of support and tools around there.
Yeah.
Go online and check various websites out. Educate yourselves. And, that will help people for next year. But it's not all doom and gloom. We hope that next year can provide opportunities for people as well.
Yes, I think there's massive opportunities. The world's changing, so much and so fast, and I think I'm quite excited for what next year holds, because I think that there's ways for us to benefit from what's happening in the world, so we just have to keep our eye wide open and make sure that we spot those opportunities and then have the guts to actually jump and invest or to take some risks, because with no risk come no reward. So have that fire in you ready to think, what have I got to lose? Kojo, we've kind of come to the end of this wonderful conversation. Is there anything that you would like to tell the people? Any future plans or anything that you'd like to?
I would just say watch space for me. So I'm Michael Kojo, and I have got some good things coming out myself. And watch this space. I want to try and help people and educate them.
Brilliant.
For the future in terms of, I think financial services can be daunting for a lot of people. 100%. And I think we, as an industry, make it deliberate sometimes.
So people can
jargon and all that stuff. And there's lots of people out there at the moment doing really good things to support people. So just look out for what people are doing, really, and have that vision, guys. Have that belief. We only have one life. That's all I would say. We only have one life. Go for your goals. Go for your what makes you happy. Like I said, the Great Resignation is there for a reason.
Yeah.
A lot of people doing the things that you want to do, they decided to quit and go and do something that they're more passionate about, or go and work for an organisation that they're more passionate about, or start their own business, or do anything they want. So people are doing things. You be one of them as well.
Brilliant. Well, if there was ever a sign, this is it. So go and do what you need to do, be successful, but most importantly, be happy. And thank you for joining me on the second edition of the Peak Performance Podcast. See you later.
Why did you change that MK?
Yeah.